Welcome to this explainer. Okay, I want you to imagine something for a second. Picture standing at the base of Mount Olympus in northern Greece, thousands of years ago. You look up at this massive, jagged peak, probably covered in these intense, violent storm clouds, and you just feel this absolute, genuine awe. The ancient Greeks literally believed that up there, totally hidden from our mortal eyes, were these magnificent palaces made of shining gold and marble. But what we're going to dive into today is exactly how the mighty Olympian gods actually came to rule those peaks, because let me tell you, it's a wild story. It's a tale of ultimate power, ultimate betrayal, and a universe-shattering war that violently ripped control from the ancient Titans and handed it to a brand new generation of gods, all led by one supreme ruler, Zeus.
But you know, before there were shining palaces, there was just immense darkness, chaos, and a whole lot of suffocating paranoia. Which really brings us to the ultimate question. How exactly did a single hidden infant manage to conquer the universe? Well, before Zeus was the king of the gods, his dad Cronus ruled supreme. And Cronus, he was absolutely terrified. He'd heard this chilling prophecy that one of his own kids would eventually rise up and overthrow him. So, what does a terrified, all-powerful tyrant do to hold on to his crown? He resorted to the completely unthinkable. He swallowed every single one of his children the literal moment they were born. I mean, just imagine the sheer desperation of a king who would cannibalize his own babies just to protect his absolute power. It was a brutal, horrifying strategy, but he thought it would keep his throne safe forever.
Okay, let's dive into this ancient world order. The universe back then was under the absolute iron grip of the Titans. Basically, they were this older generation of powerful, primal beings who ruled long before the gods we usually think about. Under the ruthless leadership of King Cronus, the cosmos was just a terrifying, totally unpredictable place. There was no real order, it was just raw authority kept in check through brute force and fear. And Cronus, he definitely wasn't going to let anyone disrupt this primal Titan rule. When he consumed his children, he genuinely believed he had completely defeated the prophecy and secured his chaotic reign for eternity. He thought he was completely untouchable.
But, as you might guess, this brutal regime just couldn't last. The massive turning point actually came on the very day Zeus was born. His mother, Rhea, decided enough was enough. She flat out refused to lose another innocent child to her husband's madness. So, in this brilliant, incredibly desperate act of deception, she secretly spirited the infant Zeus away to a hidden cave on the island of Crete. And in his place, she wrapped a heavy stone in baby clothes and just handed it right to the kin. And Cronus, who was so blinded by his own paranoia and greed, literally swallowed the stone whole. He was completely unaware that the true threat to his throne had just survived. For years, Zeus stayed hidden in that dark cave, growing stronger and stronger. Then, when the time was finally right, he stepped out of the shadows to directly challenge his father, forcing Cronus to regurgitate his siblings and kicking off an absolute cosmic rebellion. 10. That's the number. For 10 terrible, earth-shattering years, the universe was completely torn apart by the Titanomachy. I mean, this wasn't just some quick little skirmish. We are talking about a full decade of unimaginable, world-shaking battles between immortals. Oceans literally boiled, mountains were pulverized, and the very foundations of the earth shook as the Titans fought desperately to keep their chaotic grip on the cosmos. And Zeus? He unleashed Cyclopes and hundred-handed giants from the absolute darkest pits of the underworld to fight right alongside him. He basically weaponized the sky itself, hurling these devastating lightning bolts that permanently scarred the earth. But finally, at long last, through sheer tactical brilliance and just overwhelming raw power, Zeus and his mighty allies won. The Titans were banished to the deepest abyss, and a new generation of gods was ready to claim the heavens. And this brilliantly illustrates what happened next. With the Titans finally gone, Zeus had a massive problem. He had to figure out how to manage a completely shattered universe and establish a permanent new world order. So, as the main architect of the rebellion, Zeus took the sky for himself. And honestly, this was a supreme act of political maneuvering. By controlling the heavens, Zeus held the absolute highest possible vantage point. He could look down on everything, and he could wield the weather and the thunderbolt as this undeniable proof of his absolute authority. Then, to secure their loyalty, he delegated the other major realms to his powerful brothers. Poseidon took dominion over the vast, turbulent seas, meaning he controlled the literal lifeblood of the ancient world. And Hades, he was given the shadow-filled underworld, where he managed the inevitable fate of all mortal souls. Basically, the cosmos was officially under strict new management.
But look, a king is really only as powerful as the loyal subjects surrounding him, right? So Mount Olympus became this fortified stronghold for an entire family of gods who made up Zeus's royal court, his generals, and his enforcers. You have Hera, the powerful queen of the gods, helping him govern society. There's Athena, the goddess of wisdom and warfare. She was basically his brilliant tactician. Then we have Apollo, master of the sun, and his sister Artemis, goddess of the wild hunt. There's Ares, the brutal god of war commanding his armies, and Aphrodite, who controlled love and desire. Add in Hephaestus, who was busy forging their impenetrable armor, Hermes, the lightning-fast messenger executing Zeus's will, and Demeter keeping the mortal world fed. When you put them all together, this wasn't just a divine family, it was a highly organized, heavily armed power structure completely designed to maintain Zeus's absolute rule.
Now, from that super high peak, this newly established regime was constantly watching humanity. You see, once Zeus secured his power over the immortals, he really had to prove to the mortal world that his rule was absolute. And honestly, to the Olympians, mortals were often nothing more than pieces on a cosmic chessboard. Sure, sometimes they helped out heroes, swooping in during wars and adventures to reward absolute loyalty, but just as often, they totally played with human lives just to settle their own petty disputes or to show off their overwhelming dominance. Catching the eye of an Olympian could definitely mean incredible glory, but it could just as easily mean absolute, unmitigated disaster for you.
Because believe me, when mortals dared to defy the new cosmic laws that Zeus had just spent 10 whole years fighting to establish, his wrath was legendary. He had to project absolute strength, right? He couldn't risk even a hint of a mortal uprising. Take the story of Sisyphus. This incredibly cunning mortal king actually thought he could outsmart the gods, which was essentially mocking the divine authority Zeus had fought so hard to cement. Well, his sentence was meticulously designed to break his spirit forever. Sisyphus was condemned to push an enormous boulder up this incredibly steep hill in the underworld. But here is the cruel twist. Every single time he finally got that boulder close to the very top, the stone would slip and roll all the way back down to the bottom. It was an eternity of exhausting, completely pointless labor. A very clear message that defying Zeus's order is a total exercise in futility. And then there is Arachne. You have to understand, challenging any Olympian was seen as an indirect challenge to Zeus's overarching world order. And the gods were insanely swift to crush that kind of mortal pride. Now, Arachne's talent for weaving was extraordinary, literally off the charts, but her arrogance was far, far greater. She actually dared to challenge Athena, the goddess of wisdom and Zeus's favored daughter, claiming her own skills were superior to the divine. Yeah, you just do not challenge a cornerstone of Zeus's regime and expect to walk away untouched. Her incredible arrogance in the face of divine power resulted in a terrifying punishment. She was transformed into the very first spider. It stands as this stark, creepy reminder to all mortals about the extreme danger of hubris under the Olympian rule. But perhaps the most famous, and definitely the most brutal, punishment belongs to Prometheus. Now, he actually wasn't a mortal, he was a titan who survived the war, and his ultimate crime was empowering humanity. He stole divine fire from the gods and gifted it to mortals, which literally changed the course of human civilization forever. But remember, having overthrown his own father, Zeus was deeply, deeply paranoid about anyone gaining too much power. The gift of fire threatened that absolute dependence mortals had on his Olympian regime. So Zeus was absolutely furious at this betrayal. For giving humans the spark of progress, Prometheus was chained to a desolate mountain, where an eagle was sent every single day to tear out his liver, and because he's immortal, it would heal overnight, only to be torn out all over again the next day. It was this ruthless, calculated retribution designed to show the entire universe exactly what happens when you threaten the king's monopoly on power. And really, the crucial point is that this exact contrast is what makes Zeus's epic reign and Greek mythology as a whole so deeply fascinating. On one hand, you have this immense, untouchable divine power. I mean, they had the ability to conjure raging storms, command entire oceans, dictate the harvest, and completely crush armies in an instant. But on the other hand, these almighty rulers are riddled with very relatable human flaws. Despite all their cosmic authority, they were incredibly proud, they were angry, they were incredibly jealous, deeply cruel, and driven by intense paranoia. They argued and they made terrible mistakes. And this explosive combination of unlimited, godlike power and completely human emotional volatility meant that the fate of the mortal world down below was pretty much always hanging by a thread. For centuries, these captivating stories of Olympus and the epic rise of Zeus were shared around roaring fires, they were whispered in grand temples, and they were fiercely debated all across the ancient Greek world.
They genuinely became the foundational stories for Western civilization, completely shaping how humanity understood power, justice, and our own place in the universe. Now, obviously, today, those ancient temples have fallen silent, the Olympian gods are gone, and their shining golden palaces exist only in our imaginations. But the physical mountain remains. Mount Olympus still rises majestically into the sky of northern Greece, standing as this eternal, completely silent symbol of humanity's incredible, enduring capacity for storytelling.
Because the legacy of these ancient myths has absolutely survived the test of time. Their stories of love, devastating war, hard-won wisdom, and heroic adventure are permanently woven into the very fabric of our culture. So I want to leave you with this final thought. Knowing the epic rise of Zeus, from a hidden, hunted infant shivering in a dark cave, to the undisputed, thunder-wielding master of the cosmos, the next time you hear a massive crack of thunder, or you see a jagged flash of lightning absolutely split the heavens, will you just see a passing storm? Or will you, in a way, still be looking toward Olympus, imagining the great king of the gods enforcing his eternal will? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. And hey, keep your eyes on the skies.